Hello. Today is Saturday, July 25th, 2026. Here is your daily signal. According to Bloomberg, heightened Houthi attacks in the Red Sea have pushed Brent crude prices above $100, and Fortune reports the Iran war is now spreading from sea to sea as Saudi Arabia takes center stage amid nuclear expansion and conflict. The Houthi blockade began in late 2023, targeting Israel-linked vessels and disrupting oil and container shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a crucial choke point handling around 10% of the world's seaborne oil each year. These attacks are forcing ships, including those operated by Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd, to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, which means longer transit times and higher costs for trade between Asia, Europe, and North America. While major shipping companies like MSC and CMA CGM have suspended Red Sea transits. On July 25, Reuters reported Brent crude holding steady above $86 per barrel amid continued disruptions. Bloomberg noted the Suez Canal saw a 34% drop in cargo traffic year-on-year for July due to persistent Houthi threats, and the Financial Times reported freight costs have soared 40% versus pre-blockade levels, with many shipping lines suspending routes into August. In the near term, these disruptions are likely to drive further oil price volatility and squeeze global supply chains, particularly impacting Europe and Asia, while Egypt faces reduced revenues from the Suez Canal and broader shipping patterns begin to change. If instability persists, the risk heightens for military escalation and threatens continuity of oil supplies along key trade routes. Next, on to international trade and labor rights enforcement. Business Insider reports President Trump has finalized new sweeping tariffs targeting dozens of U.S. trading partners, with officials calling it the most comprehensive labor rights action in U.S. history, while Associated Press highlights double-digit tariffs imposed just before a key deadline. The U.S. began raising tariffs on certain Chinese goods in May 2024, focusing on sectors like electric vehicles, solar panels, and semiconductors as part of efforts to address unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and strengthen labor rights enforcement for imports linked to forced labor. The U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai leads policy changes impacting manufacturers like BYD and CATL, with international labor groups and U.S. unions closely monitoring compliance and enforcement. On July 25, Reuters reported $18 billion in Chinese imports became subject to new U.S. tariffs aimed at domestic job protection, while Bloomberg noted fresh investigations into forced labor violations by overseas suppliers. The Wall Street Journal reported U.S. customs enforcement actions surged 32% after new labor mandates took effect. In the near term, domestic manufacturing may benefit as Chinese imports grow costlier, while export sectors in China are already facing disruptions and seeking alternative markets. Medium term, companies may need to reconfigure supply chains to avoid tariffs, which could raise operational costs and slow innovation, but stronger enforcement of labor standards may incentivize other countries to upgrade workplace protections globally. Next, let's turn to post-quantum migration and enterprise certificate lifecycle management. Next big future spotlights AppView X arming enterprise certificate lifecycle management teams for post-quantum migration and AI adoption in its latest product release. Post-quantum migration strategies are addressing vulnerabilities in classical cryptographic algorithms exposed by advances in quantum computing, with NIST issuing draft standards for post-quantum cryptography in July 2022. This transition involves hybrid approaches combining classical and quantum-resistant algorithms as organizations like IBM, Google, Microsoft, DigiCert, and GlobalSign work to pilot and deploy quantum-safe certificates across their networks. On July 25, Security Week reported DigiCert's successful deployment of hybrid post-quantum pilots for Fortune 500 clients. IBM Newsroom documented a reduction in migration-related certificate outages from 3% to less than 1% using PQC hybrid protocols, and GlobalSign launched a migration toolkit for post-quantum enterprise certificate management. In the near term, organizations may see increased complexity from dual algorithm management, but successful migration in the medium term will reduce the risk of quantum attacks compromising authentication systems. Regulatory deadlines may arrive as early as 2027, impacting compliance and operational planning, and new management tools could accelerate the adoption of quantum-safe infrastructure, particularly in finance and healthcare sectors. Now, onto the markets. International markets were mostly positive, with Germany advancing as EWG and EWD both saw gains, while France's EWQ added 0.58%. The United Kingdom outperformed, with EWU up 1.13%, and Italy's EWI climbed 0.70%. Spain also posted a stronger 1.17% rise via EWP. Netherlands' EWN eased 0.92% and Chile's ECH was essentially flat, while Belgium EWK ticked up 0.94%. Australia barely moved. China large cap rose 0.35% led by FXI, and India recovered modestly with INDA up 0.82%. Taiwan's EWT dropped 1.83%, Hong Kong added 0.49%, and Singapore's EWS gained 0.67%. Indonesia slipped 2.26%, Malaysia dipped 0.65%, and Middle East indices were mostly weaker. Saudi Arabia, Arab Emirates, and Kuwait all posted minor declines, while Qatar was up 0.29% and Israel rose 0.23%. Africa improved by 0.66%. Commodities were mixed. Gold moved up 0.10%, silver advanced by 1%, and agriculture was flat. U.S. oil fell sharply by 2%. Platinum edged down 0.21%, carbon lost 0.79%, copper gained 0.29%, corn was nearly unchanged, wheat dropped 1.60%, uranium sank 3%, lithium slumped 1.75%, and gas retreated 0.57%. In favored stocks, Adobe surged 6% and Apple jumped 3.5%, while Microsoft barely moved higher and Low climbed 2.8%. AMD fell 3.2% and Oracle dropped 4%. Nvidia lost nearly 1%, Axon climbed 2.1%, Amazon slipped 0.66%. In sectors, the S&P 500 was narrowly higher with SPY up 0.1%, while Healthcare Roman 45 gained 0.7% and Finance XLF advanced 0.86%. Real Estate XLRE outperformed, up 2.2% with rate RWR rising 2.1%. Semiconductors stocks fell nearly 4.4% and Clean Energy QCLN dropped 4.5%. Transport was flat and agriculture MOO gained 0.72%. Top movers included BIPA soaring 790%, Stack up 261%, and LVWR jumping 90%. SXDC plummeted 73%, VSDD lost 67%, and CIS fell 50%. That's it for today. You can find more news and details on our website. Goodbye.